Good morning. I am down at Palm Beach right now in the morning. It's been raining overnight. And I just wanted to share a really significant historical moment in my life. 51 years ago, my mother died. She was killed in an act of domestic violence by my father. And from that moment, my life completely changed. I not only lost my mother, but I lost my father too. He went to prison, and then I was separated from my siblings and put into foster homes. And that started a decade or more of trauma and abuse on every level. While I was in foster homes, there was never ever any option or offer to have any emotional support or counselling of any kind. I've got a plane going over the top. We'll wait for that to go. Good old Jetstar. I'm not far from the Gold Coast Airport. So there was nothing really available to me, and so over the years I have invested a substantial amount of time, money and healing energy in the process of discovering who I am, working through my trauma and healing. And it has been the most phenomenal journey that I'm so grateful for. I'm grateful for the life lessons I've learned because of this life and these experiences. And I choose to help others because of it. It gives me a purpose, gives me meaning. It means that my mother's death was not in vain. So this morning I have a meeting, an interview online with the New Zealand Royal Commission Support Service. This interview gives me the opportunity to share vulnerably, openly and authentically my entire story of my time in foster homes and how that whole system was so broken and left me in a place of abandonment, instability, trauma and abuse. And 51 years later, I'm getting a chance to actually share my story. My understanding is there will be a Maori spiritual shaman who just listens to my story. There is a counsellor and a mediator, and I have my beautiful daughter as a support person on this side of the screen. And yeah, I just get a chance to share every aspect of my story, what happened to me as a 7-year-old impacted on my life, how the abuse that I experienced in the 13 foster homes that I went to affected my life, and the bullying that I received in schools because I was different, and the adjustment back to home life when my father was released from prison. It's another plane. I'm on the flight path. And for a start, I I'm really disappointed that it's taken 51 years for them to actually provide me with this platform to be able to share, and for them to record and have a record of my story. There's a big Royal Commission going on in New Zealand about the abuse of children in support services and also in religious groups and so forth. So this gives me an opportunity just to open up and be honest with them about how their broken system impacted on myself and so many other lives. And I guess, you know, for this I have to be grateful this morning. And I chose to come down to my happy place, my favourite spot, which is of course the beach. I love the beach. And you know, you can take the girl out of the beach, but you can't take the beach out of the girl. And this is my place where I just find a little bit of peace and comfort before I sit in on that meeting with my beautiful daughter beside me, offering me support and love. So I just wanted to share that. I will keep you up to date with the progress and how that goes. It's probably a long-winded, you know, process, but this is the beginning of something new and perhaps an official apology. Have a great day. Hey, I'm in Van Halen at the moment, and I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to each and every one of you for your beautiful messages of love and support and kindness and compassion over the last few days. It's been an incredibly emotionally draining week, and also extremely valuable. I want to share a little bit about my experience with the New Zealand Royal Commission panel, where I was interviewed this week online about my experiences in foster homes in New Zealand from the age of 7 to 12 years old. And they wanted me to share my story, my experiences, how the system treated me during that time. And it took a lot of courage for me to do this. I share my story on the stage, and I share some of my story in my Resilient Rockstar show, but when you're sharing it to this depth and capacity, it's a completely different experience. I felt incredibly vulnerable, and there were times where I felt it was confronting to go to where I needed to go. By far the most profound part of this 3-hour panel interview was when I stepped into my child and spoke from that perspective. From a little girl of the age of 7 to the age of 12. And how I felt. I arrived into foster care as a 7-year-old after witnessing the murder of my mum. I was completely traumatized. I had a really lovely experience the first foster home that I went to, and the mother there would read stories to me in bed at night. And these stories gave me an opportunity to just have a break from the reality of my life, give me some peace, and enabled me to escape into a fantasy story for a few minutes. And I don't know whether this is because I've become a children's author in some way. It's kind of like an amazing full circle back around, because my stories, The Adventures of Jessie and Rocky Rockstar, are about my daughter's rescue dog from a foster home. And it's just bizarre that these stories were kind of downloaded to me. I never, ever had the desire or goal to be a children's author. It was just like these stories were downloaded, and I wrote Puppy Rescue and Tiger, and Rocky, stories about Rocky Rockstar and him being a foster dog. It's just amazing. So perhaps in some way this lady, the first foster home mother, had an impact on me when she read stories to me in a subconscious way. I feel really a lot of compassion for her, because I know that when I arrived at her house, I was in a state of shock, delirium, total physical incapacity to do anything. When a child is so traumatized and can't express themselves emotionally, they act out, and I certainly acted out. And she had a big challenge on her hands, but she was loving and caring. Not so much for the next foster home, and I was never told why I was moving to another foster home. I was just told to put my stuff in a rubbish bag and get in the car. And as a child of 7 and 8, in that moment of being told that you are just moving and you're not wanted anymore, I felt abandoned. I felt unloved. I felt like nobody cared for me. And I felt the foster system completely let me down. There was no emotional support. There was no counselling. There was nobody on Team Donna. There was nobody that had my back. There was no consistency. And when I was in the second foster home, I was emotionally, psychologically, and sexually abused, and physically, by a foster father that should never have been in this role, looking after children.
Oh, it is now, isn't it?
I don't know what kind of screening was done back then, but it was clear that this man did not have the right intention for looking after children in his care. Whether he was just trying to fund his alcoholism, I don't know. But that had a massive lasting impact on me throughout my entire life. There was nobody there to talk to. I had nobody on my team, nobody who wanted to listen. And I just needed to be loved, secure, and heard. And there was nobody. Then that familiar foster authority in their uniform coming to the house with the same message: put your stuff in a rubbish bag and get in the car. I guess I was in survival mode. That's the only way I could describe it, is you're just living minute by minute, day by day. And in the meantime, you're trying to process what's going on and feeling completely abandoned. I've lost my father, who's gone to prison. My mother's been killed, and most of my siblings I've separated from. And I'm in a strange house with strangers, and I just feel afraid. I feel unsafe. I feel insecure. I feel unloved. I feel abandoned. And these are the feelings that are a constant in my life until the age of 12, when the authorities come to the last foster home, where I have been emotionally and psychologically abused by the foster mother, where I stayed for nearly 2.5 years. My nana died in this foster home, and I wasn't even allowed to go to her funeral. She was my only grandparent alive, and that was devastating to me. The care worker said to me, "You've got two choices, Donna. You can stay in foster care until you're 18, which basically just meant more of the abuse, more of the trauma for another 6 years. Or you can go back to your father, who's now been released from prison." But the hardest part of this decision was that I had to go back to the house where my mother was murdered. I can't, as an adult, I can't even fathom how the authorities could do that to a 12-year-old child, make them put that choice to somebody that's just not emotionally, psychologically able to make those kind of decisions. I was terrified. I was looking forward to being reunited with some of my siblings and being in a home, no matter how dysfunctional that looked, where I didn't have to move constantly, where I didn't have to move schools every time and make new friends and get bullied for being different. Little did I know that this next 5 years was unstable on another level. My father was an alcoholic, and we never spoke about Mum. It was just an unspoken topic. We just didn't go there. I was living on eggshells, walking on eggshells. That was life every day. My father was unpredictable. We knew what he was capable of. He'd clearly demonstrated that. I lived in fear for 5 years until he drank himself to death when I was 17. My friends didn't know what was happening, but I got bullied by the kids in high school and in middle school because I was living in a haunted house, apparently. There was a murder in the house and I was living there, so I must have been some sort of witch, or I was picked on, I was beaten up, and that was my life at school. And then I'd come home to an alcoholic, schizophrenic, father who I had no idea what he was going to do next. I had my brothers, which was a blessing, and they were my protectors, I guess, to an extent, but they were only teenagers themselves and didn't have the emotional capacity to process what was going on either. So we just never spoke about our trauma. There was no emotional support for me through the services. There was no caseworker listening to me. Nobody on Team Donna. And that's the reality of how it was 50 years ago in the Department of Social Welfare foster care system in New Zealand. That was my experience, was trauma upon trauma upon trauma, and feeling unloved, unsafe, insecure, and abandoned. It took years of investing in healing and therapy for me to work through all of this, unpack it, layers and layers and layers of trauma upon trauma. And I'm still working on it. This Royal Commission interview panel brought up a whole pile of things that I hadn't really spoken about, and I am so grateful that my daughter was there with her unconditional love and support during that process. And I just want to express how no matter how hard that was, no matter how much courage and mana it took, I had to do it. And it was a valuable process. It was another level of healing for me, but it was also me having a voice finally, after 50 years, having a voice, somebody listening, somebody caring, somebody wanting to know my experiences, in the hope that this will have a positive ripple effect on the future generations of children that are, for whatever reason, thrown into this system, abandoned from their loved ones, and only dependent and reliant on a service that has to give them all the love, compassion, support, understanding, and voice that they deserve. That's the least we can do. Good morning. Happy Tuesday. I'm at my happy place, which is, actually I'm on the headland, Palm Beach, and just below me here is the lagoon where all the doggies can play off their lead, and even around the headland a bit further here, it's a off-leash dog beach for part of that. And I think it's where you see doggies at their happiest. I hope this isn't too windy here. It's always tricky when you're outdoors with the wind. I just wanted to first of all, just express how blown away I've been with the incredible support and love and kind, encouraging messages that I've received on my social media. It's been profound, and I am truly grateful for each and every one of you. I've felt really heard and supported. This is just the beginning. I hope that by sharing my story vulnerably, this will give me an opportunity to speak more openly and more vulnerably about my experiences and my story on bigger stages, sharing my tools that I've actually developed because of my adversity, and especially children. I think if I can have an impact through maybe my keynotes in high schools or my Resilient Rockstar show in primary schools, just to build self-belief in children and resilience and empower them to know that they can overcome challenges in their life, and not only overcome them but actually thrive and flourish because of their adversity and experiences. And in the hope to change the system that is broken for the better. Because every child and every woman and every man deserve to feel safe, secure, protected and respected in their community. And this is what I strive for in my keynotes and in sharing my story. And there's been a huge amount of sacrifices in me being open and speaking out my truth. Unfortunately, none of my family, my close family, speak to me anymore because of that. And we don't have any control over how people respond to how we show up in our lives. And I believe as long as we do things with the intention of love and kindness and respect, and how people respond to that is out of our control. And some people choose to stay with their story and don't feel that it's the right thing to share, and that's okay. It's a personal choice. However, it's not okay to judge people because of it, and I think everybody has a choice there on what they want to do to share. And, you know, in speaking out and standing up and sharing my story, it's been the most incredibly healing experience, and it means that all of the adversity and the abuse that I experienced as a child was not in vain, and that my mother's death was not in vain. And I think that is an incredibly worthy and valuable gift that's come out of that. And so I will continue to do it, and I will get louder, and I will speak on stages in corporate events and schools and charity events wherever I can. And I just want to again say thank you for your support. It's truly appreciated. Kia kaha, which means be strong and stay strong in Māori.